Todd, Kyle, Dan, and the Toronto Maple Leafs are going into the Olympic break with hope, something they haven't had in months, Furzy.
Yeah, I mean, Toolsy, if this isn't the most Maple Leafs win streak ever, I'm not sure what is. Because when the team should have been selling, you were hoping that they could lose 4, 5, 15 games in a row. Now, Leafs fans are going to hope that Brad Treliving comes out with a revamped attack plan to try and trade secondary assets for tertiary pieces that'll inevitably have the Leafs get bounced out in the first round of the postseason, even if they qualify. So all we're doing right now is delaying the inevitable. And I have to sit here and listen to Leafs fans try and convince me that Morgan Riley is as valuable in the trade market as Quinn Hughes when we get to the offseason.
Todd, how much of a response to all the trade rumors do you think this sudden play is? Because frankly, the game they played in Edmonton last night was their best effort in quite some time.
I mean, I want to try and take the glass half empty approach and say it's hard to play worse than what we saw from the Leafs on the homestand. But honestly, it boils down to this team finally getting some saves. I mean, Anthony Stolarz gets his first win since early November in that 5-2 win against the Edmonton Oilers. And that's been one of the biggest Achilles heels for this team all season long. They just can't come up with a timely save. They can't get their goaltending healthy. And the scoring has kind of dried up given the fact that guys have been in and out of the lineup. You like to see the Leafs put together some complete performance, and to do it on the second leg of a back-to-back with a workmanlike performance the night before against the Flames gives you a glimmer of hope, but we're just delaying the inevitable. I mean, this roster, when you look at them man for man, isn't built to knock off a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning if Tampa gets healthy. And I think the longer you can continue to put a Band-Aid on a leg that probably needs to be amputated, I mean, this is the situation the Leafs are in because the organization just doesn't want to burn it all down and build back. I mean, look at what the look at what the Boston Bruins did last year. I mean, they make a low-key deal. They trade Brandon Carlo to the Leafs. They get Fraser Minton, and suddenly you're a lot more optimistic about the trajectory of that franchise and where they're headed. I think the Leafs need to do some retooling. Unfortunately, I don't think this win streak is going to allow them to do that.
Leafs management just must be like, guys, what are you doing to us? Because you built up the hope and we were going to gut everything here. We were going to split it open on the operating table.
Yeah, amazing that you look at the performance late last week when they get beat 5-2 by the Seattle Kraken, and you figure, you know what? A loss to Vancouver, a loss to Calgary, or a loss to Edmonton, and suddenly, you know, everybody's buying in that this team just doesn't have it. You rattle off 3 wins in a row, 2 of them against some of the bottom teams in the Western Conference, and hope springs eternal. Here's the issue that they're going to run into as well, given how fervent a hockey market Toronto is. Leafs fans are going to confuse the potential success of Team Canada in the Olympics, and somehow that's going to create a renewed confidence that with the product they're going to see from the Leafs when we return from the 3-week Olympic break could carry over. And I get it on some level because the Eastern Conference is a muddled mess after maybe Carolina and Tampa. It's as wide open from spots 2 through 10 as people continue to try and climb over each other for those playoff spots. But this Leafs team isn't built to make a deep run in the playoffs. And any Leafs fan or anybody in the front office that believes that is just deluding themselves.
Todd, can I interest you in the Toronto Maple Leafs to win the Atlantic Division at plus 30,000 right now?
No, you cannot any more than you could probably interest me in me making a case for Jason Myers to win the MVP at Super Bowl 60 on Sunday. But look, if you're trying to find a way to bet the Leafs, and I'm sure the fans out there want to try and put up a little bit to make a lot, the price on them to make the playoffs is going to give them the best path. Is it a bet that I would make? Absolutely, positively not. But that's probably a little bit better use of your bankroll at Bet Rivers than it is to try and bet the Leafs to win the division, the Eastern Conference, or the Stanley Cup.
Is Vegas a destination for any of the guys on the Olympic break, or are they all looking to Mexico and the Caribbean?
I mean, that's where I'd be looking. I mean, you can do your fair share of extracurriculars everywhere else in the world. Although, look, I was outside on Monday afternoon, had to do a remote with a radio show that was out here. 74 degrees sitting poolside for January, which scares me half to death, guys, because if it's going to be 75 to 80 in early February, it may be 144 degrees out here in the middle of July and August with the path that we're headed. But I can't see players that want to try and get away and blow off a little bit of steam coming to Vegas. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'd be much more inclined to go down to Mexico, a little Cabo, a little Puerto Vallarta, maybe some Caribbean as well, and spend 7 to 10 days on the beach. especially if I was a member of the Vancouver Canucks.
Todd, if you're that concerned, you can just move to Florida. It's been snowing there for most of the last week. I think you'll be just fine.
Well, that may be the least of the concerns if for those folks that are following the news that could be facing Florida over the next 6 to 9 months. But I digress, boys.
So is this let's close the book on this Leafs team for now. Are they buyers or sellers? Are we going to see any movement in the next little while? Like what is this? What is this team?
I mean, they should be sellers, but I don't know if that's going to be the case. And if they're buyers, what do they want to try and deal in the way of assets to try and bring in pieces that I think is going to bolster the roster? I just don't know how you try and make a move at the deadline and you think suddenly that's going to change your optimism over the final 25 regular season games and give them a glimmer of hope to try and get into the playoffs. There are just so many teams that you have to jump in the Eastern Conference. And that's before we mention teams that are much more complete on paper, the likes of the Washington Capitals, who are going to try and trend up, the Florida Panthers, who are optimistic they're going to get healthier. And even in their own province, I mean, Ottawa is a better hockey team right now on, what is it, February 4th than the Toronto Maple Leafs. And Ottawa still has plenty of ground that they need to make up if they're going to get into the playoffs themselves. So the Leafs, if they were smart, they'd be trading pieces, but we know this organization doesn't always think 1 year, 2 years, and 5 years down the road. So I expect them to try and make irrational deals. And look, maybe they're going to acquire Giannis to bolster their bigs down the middle.
Um, our focus is shifting to the Olympics for the first time in 12 years. We have NHL players playing at the Olympics. So there is an entire generation that has never witnessed the elite players playing. Going in, please tell me Canada is the favorite to win gold.
Canada is the favorite, and rightfully so. When you look at their depth, that's absolutely scary up front and on the blue line. Does take a little bit of a hit with Anthony Cirelli kind of ceding his spot for Sam Bennett. I know people say that's street justice, so to speak, because they thought Sam Bennett should have been on the roster in the first place. I think the biggest question facing Team Canada isn't telling people what they don't already know. Who's the starting goalie going to be going into the tournament? I mean, Logan Thompson's form is better than that of Darcy Kemper and Jordan Binnington. Does John Cooper go, you know what? Once Jordan Binnington puts the Maple Leaf on his chest, he's going to suddenly regain some of the form that carried them to the win in the Four Nations, given the fact that this has been a downright horrific season for the Blues netminder, dead last at last check in terms of goals saved above expected. And I think if they can answer that question, nobody's going to stand in Canada's way. Meanwhile, for Team USA, it's the exact opposite. I'm the most confident in the goaltending position for the red, white, and blue, but I wonder where the goals are going to come from. And it's ironic that you look at, since they announced the roster right around New Year's, the three of the most prolific scorers won't be on the roster for Team Canada. I mean, Cole Caulfield and Jason Robertson really made a strong push. But Team Canada is going to have to win a lot of 3-2, 3-1 hockey games, in my opinion, when they step up in class. Team Canada should want to turn these things into track meets and then trying to figure out who becomes that next best team in that, we'll call it the second tier between the Finlands, the Swedens, the Germanys, Switzerland, and Czechias of the world. I think the Sweden side is one of the more overvalued teams going into the tournament, though. They've dealt with a wealth of injuries, and I really think it's going to take a toll on that roster from top to bottom.
I like Czechia as a dark horse bronze medal favorite in this tournament if you want to get some good odds. But have you found any other numbers in the Olympic odds that you see tempting? Because it's almost too easy to just bet on Canada and the US in this sense. Who do you like?
Honestly, Kyle, I'm going to avoid Team USA and Team Canada, especially in the group stages of the tournament. Unless the number is completely egregious, it's tough to lay 3.5, 4.5 goals in some of these games. So I'll gravitate a little bit more towards the totals market and try and figure out what these teams need to be as they work through the kinks and try and figure out what the minute allotments are going to be. You mentioned Czechia, and I think they're an excellent dark horse, maybe not even to win bronze, but if things were to break the right way, they get hot in net with Lukas Dostal, who's more than capable of stealing a game or two, that they could really upset the apple cart and maybe provide a thorn in the side for some of the heavy hitters coming into the tournament. If you're looking to get a little bit more into the way of the exotics, I think the Swiss are a team that you're going to want to gravitate towards betting unders. I know Akira Schmid doesn't give you that much in the way of confidence, but I think they're built from the back end out, and I believe they can win a couple of low-scoring games, and maybe you get some Martin Gerber-type performances where they can steal one. And if you want to go further down the board to look outside in the player prop market, looking at Timmy Stützle to be the leading goal scorer of the tournament, I think is worth a little bit of a dart throw, given the group that Germany will play in to try and go through. And I think so much is going to be asked of him and Leon Draisaitl up front for Germany that all it takes is a hat trick in any of these games, and suddenly a team that's going to lean on some of their frontline talent more so than Team USA and Team Canada gives it an opportunity for a dark horse in a short tournament like this to give you a very lucrative payday.
Have you guys figured out your Olympic broadcasting down in the States yet? Because I always found it infuriating. Everything's on tape delay, and you never knew what was live. Here in Canada, the host broadcaster, they show everything live, so there's no confusion.
Well, that's the smart way to do things, but we never claim that the broadcasting networks here stateside like to do everything in a productive manner. Inevitably, what's going to happen is you're going to see some of the marquee events showcased in prime time here in the States. So all of your men's and women's figure skating, going to be tough to try and track them down on Peacock and some of the other Olympic broadcasting partners. If you want to see them in real time, you're going to have to try and make sure that you comb through the schedule to figure out what ridiculous network you can watch live hockey on, especially out here on the West Coast at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, Team USA's games, at least the way they set up right now, in a little bit more favorable viewing areas across the country. So I'm thankful for that. But you're right, Toolsy. It is an exercise in futility to try and figure out which events are live, which network they're going to be on, and more importantly, how you're going to be able to pronounce a Eastern European biathlete that you never knew about coming into the tournament that will no doubt take media by storm when they take an unorthodox approach to shooting their targets.
Okay, Todd, well, sticking with the Olympics for a minute, but moving away from hockey, what are some other fun sports that you like to personally get involved with during these Winter Olympics that maybe someone scrolling through Bet Rivers could, throw a flyer on something here and there?
This won't be the most exciting answer, Kyle, by any stretch of the imagination, but I really don't bet much in the way of Winter Olympic sports. Kind of gravitate more towards the team side, the men's and women's hockey, although not much in the way of parity on the women's draw. So I'll probably take more advantage to try and watch these events, see if there's something that really stands out in qualification. But you have such heavy odds that are applied to a lot of the favorites that are there. And I'm not going to claim that I went back and watched a lot of luge, bobsleigh, or skeleton footage to get myself mentally prepared to make a long shot case for John Candy and the Jamaicans, hoping that they can finally track down that elusive gold medal.
Todd, the answer we were looking for there was curling. The answer was curling.
I mean, I feel like curling right now, isn't it like Great Britain's sport to completely dominate? I feel like Canadians should be a little bit embarrassed that they're not the favorite in pretty much every curling discipline out there.
And some American curler is going to be the oldest participant ever at a Winter Olympics.
Hey, here's a question for you guys. And I never want to take shots at Olympic athletes because they're much more talented than I'll ever hope to be in my life in any sort of athletic pursuit. When you talk to curlers, how long would it take to turn somebody who had no knowledge of the sport into an Olympic curler? Do you think you could do that from now until the Olympic cycle in 2030 and get yourself out there if you dedicate, I don't know, like 6 or 8 hours a day, every day of the week to being able to make it happen?
I can answer this question. No, it's a very difficult sport. The one sport I was told by an Olympic athlete in which if you wanted and you had the wherewithal and the funds to do it and you wanted to be in an Olympics is skeleton.
Really?
They said if you devote yourself to that for 4 years, you would have a very good shot at making an Olympic team. But a lot of people bail out because before you get funding, you can't survive. You can't eat because you have no money. So they said if you can devote 4 years of your life to doing nothing but skeleton, there's a good chance you could make an Olympic team.
Which, ironically enough, is probably the one Winter Olympic sport right alongside, some of the alpine skiing events where you need brass balls to get yourself on a sled that looks like a radial flyer and decide, what's a great idea? Going face first down an ice luge at 60 miles an hour. Guys, I got scared enough when they were pouring shots of vodka through an ice luge and I was just waiting at the bottom, given the velocity that thing would generate.
Yeah. Super Bowl time, my friend.
Yeah.
What do you got for me, boys? What do you got?
Here, well, the over-under on the Turning Point USA alternate halftime show. Over-under on people watching, 1,000.
Well, yeah, I was going to say 1,000, but it'll be reported that more people than actually live in the United States of America will turn into the broadcast because that's the cavalier approach that we've taken for how we share statistics right now over the last couple of years. But no, I mean, the Super Bowl is no doubt a celebration of sport from start to finish. We've heard all of the storylines. We know where every player was born and raised. We know the parentage. We know their lineage. We know exactly what their stat lines were, not just this year, but from their previous stops along the way. I mean, so many different ways to get involved in a game of this magnitude at Bet Rivers. And it's just a question of trying to identify which path you think gives you one of those inefficient markets that are there. One thing I will say, when you look at the over-under for National Anthem, it's actually been bet up a touch. I think the opening number I saw has moved 3 seconds to the over, which is a little rare because you figure performers, even of this caliber, oftentimes want to kind of speed through their rendition of the red, white, and blue Star Spangled Banner.
What do you think of the actual line of the game right now though? Because it's moved up. Like, I did it not open at like -3 immediately following the last game, but then quickly was bet up from there.
Never three, Kyle.
Three and a
Three and a
half.
half
Three and
at
a
some
half.
prominent national shops, and then immediately moved up into that 4.5, 5 range where we're currently sitting. And I think this is the perfect number to try and generate a little bit of two-way action. The books that I've spoken to telling me about 2 out of every 3 bets being placed on the game coming in on the Seahawks as a favorite in this particular spot. You look at favorites in this price range going back to 2000, and they haven't exactly fared all that well. Limited sample size from an against the spread perspective, just going 1-10 against the number, compiling a record of 5-6 straight up during that span. For me, I was hoping for a 6 on New England or a 5.5 with the chance to buy, knowing that this team defensively has been a lot better than advertised in their road to get to this point in the season. Now, where the market currently sits, still have a much stronger lean towards New England plus the 4.5. I just can't buy into Seattle necessarily running away and hiding in this game, although I do think they have a path to winning more comfortably than New England does. But you look at the road that Seattle had to take to get here, and it's not disparaging to the 49ers or the Rams, but it's two familiar foes that they've played multiple times during the course of the year, who they know inside and out, who don't provide the same level of defensive resistance that they're going to see from the New England Patriots. So I see a little bit of lower scoring game than what the betting market suggests. And I'll even give you a final score prediction. I'll go with New England 23-20 to pull off the outright upset and make every football fan across our country and yours extremely sick to their stomach, knowing that they thought they were going to have at least a decade between Patriots dynasties.
And that would take the under. What's your inside scoop on?
Hey, funny story about that, Toolsy.
Yeah.
Funny story about that. One of our former Fox colleagues, who shall remain nameless, who has arguably the biggest show, radio, TV simulcast, shared with his listenership and viewership yesterday that he expected a lower scoring game in the Super Bowl, and then proceeded to predict the final score of 27-23, which last I checked would mean an over. Nice luxury to have, that if you win and the game goes over, you say, I predicted the game to go over. And if the game stays under, you say, well, I told people that it was going to be a lower scoring game. That's why there are certain folks in media that make the big bucks. And I'm here grinding away with you two ugly mugs every Wednesday morning.
What's your inside scoop on the coin toss?
That the side of the coin that's a little bit more heavily weighted is typically the heads. But you have to look at the way it's imprinted to try and figure out. If
Tails never fails, though.
It doesn't, other than the 29 times that it has through the first, 59 Super Bowls. This is a bet here. This is my PSA, and this isn't going to make the folks at Bet Rivers happy, but I'm going to say it anyways. If you're looking to bet the coin toss, find a buddy, give yourself even money. Don't lay juice at a regulated sports book to bet the coin toss on what is truly a 50-50 proposition. Hopefully, I'm still able to come back and join you guys next Wednesday, and they don't terminate my contract with that little bit of advice.
Todd, here's a prop that I like, and it kind of goes along with your predicted score. Game to be tied after it's 0-0 is about a pick 'em right now, and it seems if it's going to be a close game, there's a good chance we see it at 3-3, 7-7, 10-10, something like that along the way.
We have seen much more competitive playoff games this year, Kyle, than what we've typically grown accustomed to in the past. It's just so tough to try and get that outcome to go exactly the way that you need it to, whether it is teams trading field goals early on or the different permutations that are there. So it's not a market that I've really ever done a whole heck of a lot with in terms of trying to make a compelling case one way or another. One market, though, that's always interesting, and it seems to trip up a lot of recreational bettors out there. Will there be a team that scores 3 unanswered times in the game? You'd be amazed if you went back and looked. Even games that were competitive, you don't need a blowout for a team to score 3 straight times. And there's a reason it's priced with the yes so heavily favored here. But that's purely a math play more than anything else. And when you get into that $1.60 range, it kind of prices you out. So that's one to keep in mind, along with the always fun, the over-under for the longest touchdown or shortest touchdown in the game, sitting at 1.5 yards. Even in lower scoring games, gravitate towards betting that thing under 1.5 than trying to take that juicy price tag on the over.
here's my pick for best value. Any quarterback to record a reception is plus 1,000. And I think that because every Super Bowl we see a trick. They run plays we've never seen before.
Who would you feel more comfortable making that reception to? Do you have more confidence in Sam Darnold kind of wandering around looking lost on a little wide receiver throwback? Or do you think Drake May, if he got into the
No,
open
it's not
field,
Darnold. It's May all day.
if May is able
Mayday,
to step on the
Mayday.
guy? See, the other thing though, and remember with this as well, I believe it's got to happen in the course of play. So if it were to happen, say on like a Philly special on a 2-point conversion, I'm not sure you're able to cash that 10-1. So as always, read that fine print on some of these Super Bowl props.
Todd, if you like New England to win this game, then you have to love Drake May at plus 215 to win MVP.
I would probably prefer the Patriots on the money line, even right around $2. I know you get a little bit of a bump there, but there are just a couple of other paths for other players to take home the hardware. I mean, we saw Julian Edelman win the MVP, a little bit unexpected when he was able to do so. I know Tom Brady did against the Atlanta Falcons in the game. The Patriots stormed back down 28-3, but I think James White probably should have been the guy there. So for me, if I was going to bet a quarterback to win MVP, even though I like the Patriots, I think there's more upside on Sam Darnold. I mean, he's a little better than even money, right around plus $1.20. And you're looking at a Seahawks team that's right around minus 230 on the money line to win the football game. So I think there's a higher correlation there just because you try and figure out what kind of stat line you need from, say, Jackson Smith and Jigba. He'd probably need 150 receiving yards, a pair of touchdowns, but also contingent on Sam Darnold throwing multiple picks, that it's just tough to see a way that a skill position player, wide receiver, could win and not Sam Darnold, who arguably makes kind of that Disney storyline with his career arc. He goes from, seeing ghosts as a member of the Jets against the New England Patriots to doing his best Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray vanquishing the ghosts as a member of Ghostbusters in 2026.
Thanks, Furzy. Enjoy the Turning Point USA halftime show headlined by Kid Rock and Gorbly Flipknot.
Hey, it's always a pleasure, guys. And here's what I'm going to do between now and the next time we chat. I'm going to look at the great city map throughout the GTA, and I'm going to help the city of Toronto figure out how to plan the Leafs parade that inevitably is coming. That'll pick up in earnest once we get back from the 3-week Olympic hiatus.
Wow. That's it. That's all I got.